In the heart of Europe lies Romania, a nation often overshadowed when the stories of World War II are told. Yet behind the thunder of tanks and the clash of empires, there was another kind of battlefield, one that fueled the war itself. It was not fought with rifles or artillery, but with oil, and in that silent struggle, Romania became one of the most important players of the entire war, before the first shot of the conflict was ever fired. Romania was already known as one of the world's leading oil producers. Its fields had turned it into a vital source of fuel long before Hitler or the Axis dreamed of conquest. By the early 20th century, Romania had become a global energy power driven by both its own ingenuity and foreign investment. When the Great War ended and the world rebuilt, itself the wells of Romania kept pumping, feeding industries and armies alike. When the Second World War erupted, Germany quickly realized how essential those Romanian oil fields were to its plans. The modern engine of war ran on fuel, and without oil, even the mightiest army was powerless. By the time Germany prepared for its invasion of the Soviet Union, it had already become dependent on the steady flow of oil from one place. The Romanian city of Ploiesti, Hitler himself called it his gas station. Ploiesti's oil refineries were the beating heart of Axis fuel supply, producing over half of Germany's total oil. And the Allies knew that if they could destroy those refineries, they could cripple the Nazi war machine. It would not be an easy task. But deep in the deserts of North Africa, the Americans began to plan something bold. An air raid so daring that it would change the history of air warfare forever. They called it Operation Tidal Wave. The mastermind was Colonel Jacob Edward Smart, a man who had studied the lessons of an earlier failed attempt to bomb the same oil fields a year before. That earlier mission, known as the Halverson Project, or HALPRO, had seen only 13 American bombers make the long flight from Egypt to Romania. They dropped their bombs on Ploiesti but caused little damage. The raid was small and unopposed. Yet it gave the Allies hope that a larger, more coordinated attack could finish the job. Colonel Smart believed that success would come with greater force and precise coordination. His plan called for 178 heavy bombers and over 1,700 airmen. They would fly in daylight and at very low altitudes, skimming the earth to evade radar. It was a risky plan, but it offered surprise. For weeks, crews practiced in the Libyan desert, perfecting the dangerous art of low-level bombing. Every man knew this would be one of the most dangerous missions of the war. But what the Americans did not know was that the Axis had learned from the first attack. After the Halpro raid, Germany and Romania had transformed Ploiesti into one of the most heavily defended places in Europe. Dozens of anti-aircraft batteries surrounded the city. Hidden guns were placed inside fake buildings, haystacks, and even train cars. They were ready. The Allies had no idea. On the morning of August 1st, 1943, the American bombers lifted off from their dusty airfields in Libya. The mission had begun. 5 bombardment groups took to the air together, but from the very start, the omens were grim. As the planes rose into the sky, the dust storms caused one aircraft to crash before even leaving the base. Still, the rest pressed on over the Mediterranean Sea. Soon another bomber went down, plunging into the waves. There were no survivors. Radio silence was to be maintained at all costs to avoid detection. But without communication, confusion spread among the fleet. Several aircraft turned back, unable to continue. Then, over the mountains of Yugoslavia, 2 entire groups became separated from the others. The carefully timed formation began to unravel. As they crossed into Romania, the bombers were already scattered and off schedule. A mistake in navigation sent some of the lead aircraft drifting toward Bucharest instead of Ploiesti. Desperate radio calls broke the silence, but it was too late. Colonel Addison Baker, commanding one of the groups, saw the confusion and made the decision to break away and head for the correct target on his own. The defenders of Ploiesti were ready. As the first bombers approached the city, the sky exploded with fire. Anti-aircraft shells burst all around the formation. The low altitude made the Americans easy targets. Baker's plane was struck again and again, but he refused to turn back. He held his course, releasing his bombs over the target before his aircraft was consumed by flames. He and his co-pilot, Major John Jerstad, were both killed. Their bravery would later earn them the Medal of Honor. Chaos ruled the sky above Ploiesti. Thick smoke rose from the burning refineries and obscured everything. Pilots could barely see the ground. Some planes dropped their bombs too early, others too late. Several were destroyed outright. The 93rd Bomb Group lost 11 aircraft in just minutes. One bomber fell into a nearby women's prison, killing over 100 civilians. It was turning into a nightmare. Colonel Compton, leading another group, realized his mistake only when he saw the skyline of Bucharest below. He quickly turned north, but by then the element of surprise was lost. The Germans and Romanians were fully alert. Heavy fire met them as they tried to find new targets. In desperation, they dropped their bombs on anything resembling an industrial site before escaping south. When the next wave arrived, they were flying into hell itself. The 44th and 98th bomb groups followed the railways leading to the city, unaware that an armored train below was loaded with anti-aircraft guns. As they passed overhead, the wagons opened up, revealing cannons that unleashed a storm of fire. The sky turned into a blazing wall of explosions. Yet the Americans fought back, shooting out the train's engine even as more bombers were torn apart. Colonel Leon Johnson of the 44th Group and Colonel John Kane of the 98th pressed on through the inferno. Flames and debris engulfed their aircraft, but they refused to turn back. One refinery after another went up in smoke. The men knew they would likely never make it home, yet they carried on. Johnson and Kane would both earn the Medal of Honor for their leadership that day. Further north, Colonel Jack Wood led the 389th Bomb Group toward another target, the Steaua Romana refinery. Lieutenant Lloyd Hughes, piloting one of the bombers, took multiple hits as he approached the blazing complex. His aircraft was burning, but he held his course, determined to release his bombs. As he passed through the towering flames, his plane caught fire from below. He tried to land in a nearby riverbed, but the wing clipped the ground and the bomber exploded. Hughes was killed instantly, along with most of his crew. He too would be awarded the Medal of Honor. In total, the Americans managed to strike 6 of the 9 intended targets. The destruction was severe but not decisive. Ploiesti's oil production fell by nearly half, but within weeks, much of it was restored. Only the Steaua Romana refinery remained out of action for the rest of the war. The cost to the Americans, however, was catastrophic. Of the 178 bombers that left Libya, only 88 returned to their base. Many were riddled with holes and barely able to fly. Dozens more limped to Allied airfields in Cyprus, Malta, and Sicily. Over 500 airmen were killed, missing, or captured. It was one of the bloodiest days in American Air Force history. The Axis defenders paid a far smaller price, losing only a handful of aircraft and soldiers. Yet even they were stunned by the bravery of the Americans, who had flown through what was perhaps the most heavily defended target outside of Germany itself. Operation Tidal Wave became known as Black Sunday, a name that captured both the courage and the tragedy of the mission. It was one of the first times the Allies had attempted a low-level daylight raid of that scale, and the results were mixed. Technically, it was a partial success, but strategically it showed the limits of such daring assaults. Navigation errors, mechanical failures, and human confusion all combined to turn a bold plan into a costly disaster. Yet the courage of those men who flew through walls of fire to strike the heart of the Axis war machine would not be forgotten. 5 Medals of Honor were awarded for their heroism, more than any other single air mission in history. Only 2 of those recipients survived to receive them. The oil of Ploiesti continued to flow for some time afterward, feeding the Nazi war effort until later campaigns, and the Soviet advance finally ended it for good. But the memory of that August day remained a testament to the price of bravery and the human cost of war. In the years that followed, historians would debate whether Operation Tidal Wave was worth it. Some called it a heroic failure, others a vital blow to German industry. But for the men who flew that mission, it was neither success nor failure. It was survival. It was sacrifice. And it was a symbol of what it took to challenge tyranny in a world consumed by flames. From the sands of Libya to the skies above Romania, from the roar of engines to the silence that followed, the story of Ploiesti stands as one of the most dramatic and devastating air raids in history. It was the day the Americans tried to drain the fuel from the Nazi Empire, and though they failed to destroy it entirely, they proved something greater. That even in the face of overwhelming odds, human courage could still burn brighter than the oil fires of war.